When I left his office, the hallway felt too bright, too exposed. I returned to my desk but couldn't focus. Mike Taylor's name echoed in my thoughts like a low hum I couldn't silence. Why me? Why now? That night, I stayed late. The office emptied around me as I opened diagrams, rewrote explanations, questioned every assumption. I practiced speaking aloud in an empty meeting room, tripping over words, then starting again. At home, Al barely noticed my exhaustion. He talked about a game, about practice, about nothing that mattered to me in that moment. I nodded, smiled faintly, and went to bed with my laptop still open beside me. Days passed like that. Coffee-fueled mornings, anxious afternoons, restless nights. John noticed, of course. "You're pushing yourself too hard," he said one afternoon, as we walked out together. "I don't have a choice," I replied. He smiled gently. "You always have a choice. You just don't always see it yet." The night before the showcase rehearsal, I stood in front of the mirror, smoothing my blouse with trembling fingers. I barely recognized the woman staring back. Tired eyes, determined mouth, something sharper in my gaze now. I took a deep breath. "You belong here," I told myself, whether Al believes it or not. And for the first time since that Christmas party, I felt the fear shift. Not disappear, but transform into something dangerously close to resolve. The morning of the showcase arrived too quickly. I was fastening the last button of my suit when Al leaned against the bedroom doorframe, arms crossed, watching me with that familiar mixture of boredom and suspicion. The mirror reflected us both, me standing straight, trying to breathe through the knot in my chest, him slouched, already unimpressed. I was fastening the last button of my suit when Al leaned against the bedroom doorframe, arms crossed, watching me with that familiar mixture of boredom and suspicion. The mirror reflected us both, me standing straight, trying to breathe through the knot in my chest, him slouched, already unimpressed. "So," he said at last, "this is the big day?" "Yes," I replied, smoothing the fabric over my waist. "The showcase." He let out a short laugh. "Funny how they'd give something this important to you. You've been there, what, 1 year?" I didn't answer. I knew where this was going. He continued, casually cruel. "You sure your manager doesn't have a thing for you? That's usually how these things work." I turned to face him then. "That's not fair. I'm just saying." He shrugged. "Companies don't just hand the spotlight to new joiners. Not unless there's something else going on." Something inside me hardened. "I worked for this," I said quietly. "I designed the project. I wrote the documentation. I earned this." He waved a hand dismissively. "Relax. Don't get carried away. It's just a presentation." "Just a presentation." I picked up my bag, my voice steady, despite the burn behind my eyes. "I'm leaving." He didn't stop me. The venue was already buzzing when I arrived. Glass walls, polished floors, clusters of people speaking in low, important tones. As I checked in, I caught my reflection again in the mirrored surface near the entrance. The suit fit me perfectly. Tailored, understated, elegant. Deep navy, crisp white blouse, minimal jewelry. I didn't look like someone pretending anymore. I looked like I belonged. That realization steadied me. Inside the hall, my heart raced as I set up my slides, adjusted the microphone, took a sip of water I barely tasted. When my name was announced, the room seemed to hold its breath. And then I spoke. Once the first sentence left my mouth, the fear loosened its grip. The architecture made sense. The vision was clear. Faces nodded. Notes were taken. Questions were asked. And I answered them. When it ended, applause filled the room. Real applause. Not polite. Not obligatory. I exhaled. As people began to stand and move around, John found me near the side of the stage. "You were incredible," he said, grinning. "Seriously, thank you," I said, my voice still a little unsteady. I thought I was going to faint at the beginning. "You didn't show it," he replied. Then, more casually, he added, "By the way, you chose the right outfit. Very you. Confident. Clean." I smiled, despite myself. "I'll take that as a compliment." "It absolutely is." We walked together toward the refreshments table, the tension slowly draining from my shoulders. "I kept thinking," John continued, "this is what it looks like when someone finally gets seen." Before I could respond, movement near the front of the hall caught my attention. Mike Taylor. He didn't look at me. He didn't pause. He walked past in his usual cold, controlled way, jacket perfectly pressed, expression unreadable. A few senior managers fell into step beside him as he headed toward a closed meeting room. Power followed him like a shadow. For a brief second, I wondered if he felt anything: pride, irritation, regret. Then the door closed behind him, sealing the thought away. "He's already on to the next battle," John said quietly, noticing my gaze. "Yeah," I replied. "That seems like his style." As the crowd thinned and the noise softened, I realized something unexpected. I wasn't thinking about Al's words anymore. I wasn't shrinking myself to fit anyone's doubts. I had stood on that stage alone, and I had been enough. The showcase ended the way big events always did. Slowly at first, then, all at once. People drifted out in clusters. Voices softened. Heels clicked less urgently against the floor. I packed my laptop with hands that were finally steady, my body humming with leftover adrenaline. Outside, night had settled in quietly. The air was cool, sharp enough to clear my head. John waited near the entrance, jacket over one arm, phone in his hand. When he saw me, he smiled. Not the wide, performative kind people used at work, but something easy and real. "You survived," he said. "Barely," I replied, half laughing. "I think my brain is still on stage." He nodded toward the parking lot. "I can give you a ride if you want." "It's late." The offer was casual. Kind, nothing more. And yet my chest tightened instantly. "Oh," I hesitated, already shaking my head. "No, it's okay. I'll take an Uber." John looked at me for a moment, reading what I wasn't saying. "You sure?" "Yes," I said too quickly. Then, softer. It's complicated." He didn't push. He never did. "All right. Just wanted to make sure you get home safe." We stood there in an awkward pause, the unspoken hovering between us. I could already picture it. Al seeing me step out of John's car, the questions, the accusations, the familiar spiral. John was handsome, successful, calm, in a way that made Al's edges look sharper by contrast. And lately, Al had been nothing but edges. "I really meant what I said earlier," John added. "You were impressive tonight." "Thank you," I said. "That actually means a lot." We said goodnight, and I watched him walk to his car, his posture relaxed, unburdened. For a brief, disorienting moment, I wondered what it would feel like to accept something without fear. The ride home was quiet, too quiet. Al was on the couch when I walked in, phone in hand, TV playing something he wasn't really watching. He glanced up. "So?" he asked. "How'd it go?" "It went well," I said. "Really well." He scoffed lightly. "Of course it did." I set my bag down. "What does that mean?" "It means," he said, shrugging, "you like being the center of attention." I stared at him, exhausted. I presented my work. "That's my job." "Sure," he replied. "Funny how people like Mike Taylor suddenly care about your ideas." There it was again, the dismissal. The suspicion. I didn't argue this time. I just felt it, clear and sharp, how small he wanted me to stay. Later, lying in bed beside him, staring at the ceiling, I replayed the day in fragments. The applause, John's quiet encouragement, the way my voice hadn't shaken when it mattered. And then Al's words, his tone, his need to cut me down the moment I stood taller. I realized something then, with a calm that surprised me. This wasn't just insecurity anymore. It was control, and I was tired of shrinking to protect it. For the first time, the thought of leaving didn't scare me. It felt inevitable.